loves, my name is Paige, this is Paige with Paige, and today we're going to be talking through my August wrap-up. August was brilliant. I was participating in Pickpongathon hosted by Crystal from Bomb Book Reviews and also the Magical Readathon created by G from Book Roast. I did complete my TBR for both of those. Doing the Alchemist career, I needed to read 14 books. I did swap one out at the very end of the month and we were teetering on the line of this is not going to be okay. I also did a really fun video concept because it was Audacity August. I stole other people's TBR game prompts and picked the next book that I was going to read based on that, and I'll leave it linked up above because I'm really proud of like talking about both the people in the book, and I had a lot of fun with it. I ended up reading 15 books. I'm finding that I'm not able to read after work as much, whether that be because I'm doing YouTube videos, I want to chill, I'm cooking dinner, whatever else, I want to relax. We were working on a jigsaw and I forgot to put audiobooks in. I'm finding that I'm not reading after work, I'm just unwinding and then reading a fuck ton on the weekend. So when I was off for the first week of the month with COVID, that is how this booktuber shout out of 10 books came to fruition. Let's dive into the stats. Firstly, I read 15 books, which equated to 5,424 pages, which is 175 pages per day, and on average 362 pages per book. My average rating was a 4.3. For genres, I had 1 contemporary, 10 fantasy, oh my god, it was such a heavy fantasy month, 1 historical, 1 paranormal, and 2 sci-fi. For format, I read 2 audiobooks, 1 ebook, 3 physical, and 9 physical audiobook combinations. For age range, I read 10 adult, 4 YA, and 1 children's. I'm not counting it as a middle grade because it's a picture book. I'll explain that when we get to it. My ratings were, I had 3 5 stars, 4 4.5, 7 4 stars, and 1 3.5. I read 6 standalones. I started 2 new series. I continued on 3. I'm up to date with 2, and I finished 1. Yay! And I will be having some videos coming this month talking through my series in a little bit more detail. I'm very excited for that. My big book was The Book of Life, and the edition that I was looking at was 561 pages, and my smallest book was a children's book, which was The Bad-Tempered Ladybird by Eric Carle, which was 40 pages. My listening hours was 50 hours, and considering I was also doing jigsaws and not listening to audiobooks for that, I am very impressed. In terms of publication, there was 1 book from 1977, 1 book from 1997, 1 from 2003, 4 between 2011 and 2015, 4 between 2016 and 2020, 3 2021 releases, and 1 2022 release. So with all of those statistics out of the way, let's dive into the books. The first book that I read was Felix Ever After by Kaysen Kelleder. I gave this a 4 stars. This was a really beautiful exploration into what it means to have multiple marginalized identities and finding yourself, feeling confident in yourself, and wanting to find love and just growing up as a teenager. I found it really interesting in the scenario that they get themselves into, and I thought a lot of it was handled so well. Obviously the representation is own voices, so I had a lot of fun with that. I think it's a really wonderful coming of age, and I'm really appreciative that this exists for teenagers to be able to pick up and identify with. Next up, I read A Prayer for the Crowd Shy by Becky Chambers, and I gave this 5 stars. I adored the Monk and Robot series. This duology is just so wholesome and lovely and warm. Moscap is cemented as one of my favorite characters, and I had so much fun just getting to see them explore and find out what do they need as humans, as robots, what exists in the world that gives our life meaning and pleasure and enjoyment, and just the messages in this was absolutely beautiful and very much appreciate taking on a slower side of life. Next up, I read The Subtle Knife by Philip Pullman. This is the second book in his Dark Materials trilogy. I gave this a 4 stars. I definitely enjoyed it, but I can definitely see that it is a middle book. I believe that Philip Pullman intended for this to be one omnibus. I can see that the start and end points were engaging points, but the middle sort of just, yeah, cool, we're just continuing on. There's not too much happening. So I'm glad that it's the shortest out of the lot because it definitely did feel like a middle book, and I feel like if you read it all in one go, it wouldn't have that same feeling. It would just flow on consistently and not lose the momentum as hard as it is when you're reading them as each individual book. But still really enjoyed it. I love Lyra's continuation of exploring the world, and I find that her character can be a little bit hit or miss, but overall I had a good time with it. Next up, I finally did. I read A Dance of Dragons Part 2 by George R.R. Martin, and I gave this a 3.5 stars. I'm just finding that political fantasy in this sort of slash stabby stab, let's fucking burn everything, is not my vibe. I much prefer political fantasies like Robin Hobb, where I feel like it's intricate and delicate in the exploration. You're building up the magic in this world. This is just a people going stabby stab, I'm a fucking dick, and yeah. It's not my favorite. I'm glad that people do love the series as much as they do. And I don't care how long it takes for the next one to come out because I'm up to date and it will sit there on my series tracker looking beautiful. Next up, I read The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini and I gave this a 4.5. This was just absolutely beautiful and heart-wrenching. I adore the exploration of the content, and the book itself as a whole is bloody amazing. I'm also not a literary fiction reader, so I feel like that's more a me thing than the book thing, and I highly recommend anyone that wants to have their heart torn out of their asses. And the ending completely wrecked me. Also, with these two books, I can now scratch off 2 sections of my scratch map, which makes me extremely happy. Next up, I read Full Metal Alchemist volumes 13, 14 and 15 in this bind-up. Holy shit, 5 stars. Oh my god, we're getting into the heavy-duty alchemy style, and the feelings are happening. I can see the ending is not yet upon us, but we are starting to broach, and I'm concerned for these characters. I love them with my entire heart and being, and I can't wait to continue on and see where we go. A lot of the world and the political side of things have been revealed and established with characters, so things are shaking up and it's glorious. So I'm very excited to continue on with the rest of this. Then I read The Fireheart Tiger by Aliette de Bodard and I gave this a 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was a short little novella that explored a lot of different things in a very compact period of time. It was very interesting. While I was reading it, I was definitely exploring and looking at things from a different perspective, and I really liked the relationship dynamic that was in it. Next up, I read The Flames of Out Beyond by Jean Menzies and I gave this a 4.5. I adore this fantasy setting, world, characters. They are so wholesome and beautiful. It feels very soft. It's very reminiscent of if Becky Chambers decided to write a medieval fantasy, and I loved it. I think that these characters are just so lovable. I had very nostalgic vibes considering it is a newish release, and so I'm just very excited to see where it goes. Also, the switch when the love interest and things start happening, holy shit. But oh my god, it was glorious. 0 regrets. Next up, I read Bloody Rose by Nicholas Ames and I gave this a 4 stars. I had so much fun with these characters. I just didn't love them as much as the original band, and I think that's okay. I definitely shed a tear towards the end, and seeing the bard tell the story was just very interesting, and I liked the fact that Nicholas Ames continues to twist fantasy tropes on their heads and provide us with something a little bit more unique than just you're going on a quest to save someone. I really enjoyed Tam, who was our protagonist. I feel like they were very relatable in a lot of things that they were thinking and feeling, and yeah, it was a lot of fun, which I find Nicholas Ames just knows how to write a fun book, which yes please. Next up was The Book of Life by Deborah Harkness. This is the last in the main All Souls trilogy and I gave it 5 stars. I have fallen in love with these characters. The friendship dynamics that I absolutely adored were back in this book, and I'm so happy to be back with these characters, back in this world, and back in an academic setting. It hit all the things that I absolutely adore, and this series is absolutely amazing. It is so unique, and I love seeing the different conversions of the different types of creatures that exist in this world because it's glorious, and the ending blew my mind, blew me socks off. It was great. My battery's gonna die, so if I cut off mid-sentence or there is abrupt camera angle change, that is why. Next up, I read Sister Song by Lucy Holland and I gave this a 4 stars. I really enjoyed seeing a retelling, which I didn't know the original story to, but with trans representation at the forefront. Our protagonist, Keen, is accepting what they've always known to be true and having the struggles of trying to be accepted in this medieval time with very interesting dynamics. The 2 other sisters' perspectives were interesting, but I didn't like them as much, so I was very invested when we jumped back to Keen's perspective, as it's told in the perspective of all 3 sisters. There was a very interesting discussion I had with Ash at the end of the book when something is revealed, and I think that it opens up a lot of opportunities to explore a variety of different conversations that we don't always have when surrounding ourselves with ancient literature, although they are readily there and available to have it. Next up, I read read Terra Nullius by Claire G. Coleman, and I gave this 4.5 stars. I was reading this as part of the Last to Read book club, hosted by Mel from A Book Fiend Named Belle, Elle from Earl Grey Books, and Lana from Law and Lullabies. And I think everyone had similar sort of reactions. We were blown away. It was bloody brilliant. This was Erin's pick for the Advent Challenge, so I will mark that off in a second. And I think we all just were like, what the actual fuck? This is brilliant. It explores on colonization, our Indigenous people in Australia and their survival, looking at how colonialization was forcing the re-education of an entire race of people into different standards, and it just does it in such a brilliant way. It is not your typical historical fiction looking at it from a clear-cut lens. It definitely has twists and turns, which I very much appreciated. Apologies for the camera angle change, battery died. But as I was saying, I experienced the whole range of emotions and it was absolutely brilliant. Like I said, that was Erin's pick for my Advent Challenge, so let me just find it. Here it is. I apologize, I didn't mark off the two on camera during the rapid fire for the last one, but it was Author Born in February, which was Alexandra Bracken, which was In the Afterlife, and I can't remember the other one that I did, but anyway, that's fine. Erin gave me the prompt of apocalyptic by an Indigenous author, and then said we're going to read Terra Nullius with this group, which fills this prompt. So we're just up in this corner here. Oh. There we go, little doggo. And so I just need those two, Poppy War or The Night Circus. And speaking of, the next book that I read was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This was recommended to me for the Advent Challenge, book specific for Jacqueline from Jaxie Jax Reads, and I gave this a 4.5. I really enjoyed the academic setting, so I was aware going in that that might not be the whole book, and I really enjoyed seeing Rin's character grow, the found family that she develops throughout this, and the utter brutality that is this book. There are particular scenes that definitely were upsetting, but I don't feel like it was as brutal as BookTube or my expectations were sort of expecting. Like, there were scenes that I was definitely like, fuck, this like trumps on Jesus Christ, okay, we're going here, we're going dark, excellent. But that wasn't maintained throughout the entire book. I feel like the magic that was explored in it was really dark and gritty, and I'm very curious to continue on and see where we go in the Dragon Republic, because I think the ending was the weakest point for me. So I'm very curious, and Ash read this recently, so him and I had an excellent discussion about it, and I've talked with Jacqueline about it as well. And so yes, Ash is definitely keen to continue on because he has so many theories that he wants to know if it's going in that direction or not, and I would like to because I need to finish series that I start, but it's gonna linger on my shelf for another 6 months before I pick to it because I'm horrendous like that. Yay! I did a strategic! So the Poppy War is here. I got my little Corgo, and there we go. 9 months in, I got my first bingo. In all technicality, if I had have marked off free space, then I would have got that, but I need to think on what I'm actually going to fill that for, because I might have a different prompt rather than making it a free space. But we've got one and I'm super happy, so yay! Look at all the Corgo butts. Then the next book I read was City of Fallen Angels by Cassandra Clare, and I gave this a 4 stars. I enjoyed this more than the last 3 Mortal Instruments. I was really enjoying the first half and seeing all the vampiric lore that comes to the front, and then we hit on the I'm just a douche canoe and well, I don't deserve love, but I'm enjoying them. I understand why people say that this is not Cassie Clare's finest series. I'm heavily invested in seeing where this goes and learning more about the world, and I'm so thankful that I'm breaking it up with the Infernal Devices in between this, because that is giving me hope. These are definitely very YA, but they can be a lot of fun if you go in with low expectations, or they're rereads and you've absolutely loved them before. And then finally, the last book that I read was because I was panicking that I wasn't going to be able to read the book that I had assigned for childhood favorite, which is over 500 pages, and I had 2 days. So I read The Bad-Tempered Ladybird by Eric Carle instead. Normally I don't wrap up picture books or children's books on my channel because I was reading heaps when I first started my channel and was working as a teacher. Now it's mostly just graphic novels that I'll review. But I did read this for a particular purpose, so that's why I've counted it, and I gave this 4 stars. Which is, it feels weird to say, this was one of my favorites as a kid, and I think I realized where I got my sassy personality from a little bit. I really enjoyed just seeing this through an adult's lens and looking at it from a teacher perspective and being able to talk to Ash and being like, oh, I really like the repetition of common words so kids would be able to pick that up easier. I really like that they've got that analog clock so that older students would be able to actually engage with that and be able to tell what the time was and draw those parallels between the words spoken and or written and the clock that is on the picture. I also like seeing the difference in size, using that for scale, and so there was a lot of fun stuff that I could pull from it. I understand there were a few Goodreads reviews that were like, this is not one that I would give to children because you wouldn't want them to go around going, hey, you want to fight? Which I fully respect and definitely is probably not the best thing to teach kids by, let's go pick on something bigger than you. But here we are. Ash got to fall asleep to my melodic tones. They are not melodic, but yes. It was a fun time, and it got to tick off the last magical readathon prompt that I needed, which was fantastic. These are all the books that I read for the magical readathon and Pickpongathon, and I just love that such a high reading month because of these 2 amazing readathons. I'm just so motivated to read all the things and fulfill the Alchemist career. Let me know in the comments what was the best book that you read in August and or what was your worst? I'm curious to know. If you like this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more of this mess, feel free to subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!